Well, it's been a minute, but we are back. Two Latinas with spicy women's hockey takes, men's hockey takes, international hockey takes, and certainly some political takes. Erica L. Ayala with Angelica Rodriguez. Angie, how you feeling?
Girl, I'm feeling very cold. It's been freezing here in Buffalo. And I do want to say greetings from the 11th province of Canada. Um, so
Oh my
you know,
gosh.
it's lovely
Yeah.
to be Canadian. I'm very excited to jump in my car later and drive a couple of kilometers to do my errands and get my health care. That would be lovely. So how are
Oh,
you, Miss E?
listen, I am here. It is snowing. It is snowing was snowing in Tulsa a few days ago, so everything's melting now. It's been pretty cold here.
Mm-hmm.
But I was on the East Coast for a little trip. Friend of mine had her baby shower, first baby, so that's exciting.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, so that was good. And catching up with Four Nations, which is what has brought us on to the microphones today. Now, I think I have so many thoughts. And we are definitely going to lean into the politics of it all now that we've seen everything go down. But I've spoken on a few podcasts, Angelica, about just first, I want to talk about the hockey because, you and I come from women's hockey in particular and know college hockey well. So when people had reservations about an international style tournament, although major caveat and asterisk, this was an NHL tournament, not an IIHF tournament. So
Right.
that's a little bit different. But
Mhm.
people were curious about what kind of competition we would get. And for me, that was never really the question. It was more of how is a league that very much caters to a US market going to embrace an international competition. So, just from that perspective, what have been your thoughts on the NHL seemingly leaning into international play a little more?
I mean, we can't really call it too much international play, as I mentioned. A Swedish team with Willie Nylander on it, first of all, is a choice. That being said, I think that I felt like the pomp and circumstance around it. I think it's always going to happen because of the fact that it is like a Four Nations, like international style tournament. But at the end of the day, we all knew this was an NHL event. We all knew that this was going to be
Right.
catered to those fans. Those fans were going to be, the ones that really gave a damn about this first and
Right.
foremost. I saw just from a social media perspective, because to be really honest, I didn't really play too much into that whole situation. Just from a social media perspective, though, I like there was some cute stuff that they did on like NHL Europe's Instagram and things like that, and they seemed to kind of want that, but it just again, I don't think that. I mean, there was never going to be emphasis on Sweden and Finland. It was going to be the
No.
US and Canada. We knew it was going to be the US and Canada that were going to be highlighted. Um, you know, Unfortunately, that just is what it is. And, I think that it's a shame because I do think that the NHL has very strong fan bases in both of those countries and
Right.
throughout the world. I mean, there are definitely fans that I've spoken to of hockey throughout around the world who, they want to cheer on their players. To people in Finland, Mikael Granlund and Mikko Rantanen and Ukko Pekka are those guys for them. Same thing in
Right.
Sweden with Rasmus Dahlin and with Victor Hedman and
Yeah.
so it's just I think they had a really good opportunity, and of course they kind of squandered it. So
Yeah, indeed. I had said on a podcast that the only hope I had for a true leaning into the international flair of it all was Emily Kaplan. I mean, because even in her interviews, it's a small thing, but something that you and I have talked about over the years, that even an athlete being able to hear a hello, a thank you in whatever language or languages that they speak can be so welcoming, so thoughtful, and so much appreciated. Not to
Absolutely.
mention actually at least attempting, but more so saying players' names the way they
Yeah.
care to hear them.
Yeah, and again, I think that's kind of what I saw most of when it came to Finland and Sweden. Like they had the name pronunciations, but then they did them for the U.S. and Canada too, and I'm just like, bro, like what? It's like these sometimes things don't need to be for everybody. So I thought that that was kind of weird. Although it was kind of funny to hear some of them say like their middle names and like, okay, Nathan Raymond McKinnon, like that is
Yeah.
like the
I mean,
oldest
honestly, I'm
name, oldest sounding name ever, but
I'm for it because you know what? People mess up all kinds of names. I
true.
can't even I mean, this is not spoken, but or orally I should say, but I, like people misspell my name all the time. My first name. My first name. I'm like, I need the A at the end. That's mine. It's mine. I don't need an extra K, the CK. No, I like just you see, like if I sent you an email, you should email with the name that I sent like back, you know?
I mean, you all already know the issues I've had with my name. Like,
Yeah.
where in the world do people get rid of the IC? Where do they add an N? Where do they think that it's Angelique? Like, no, it's
It's
very,
just
very
yeah.
simple.
So, I
People
mean,
like people look at me weird all the time when I say that people mispronounce my name. I'm like, no, you don't understand. People really do
yeah.
mispronounce my name.
See, so that's what I'm saying, like, I'm down for it all. It's just a good reminder because
Fair enough.
people's
Yeah.
names get mispronounced all the time, but okay, I agree with you. I mean, even at the or during the face-off championship game, like, right as Canada is celebrating, I guess it was the ESPN broadcast for the final, and it was all like, "Oh, well, you know, just don't invite anyone else," and I'm like, "Ugh, okay." Like, am I surprised? No. And like I don't need to see just the US and Canada. I wish I want to see more teams. I think Czechia is going to be an interesting team. Slovakia on the men's side, an
Mm,
interesting team. So
yeah.
yeah, but again, we weren't going to get that from an NHL tournament.
No.
So was I surprised? No. I I also am curious what the difference will be in how people receive the Olympics compared to this tournament because I think there will be a difference. And one of the things that I was talking with Rachel Donner about on the Women's Hockey Report is that also there is a difference in how we see things from the women's hockey's perspective, including that there were two broadcast partners. I mean, there were multiple ways to watch across the US and Canada. Those are things we just don't get, even though the rivalry series, world championships, that is the annual appointment viewing for international women's international hockey, especially for a North American audience. And I mean, the big underliner here, right, is that it's women's hockey. So I mean, I
Yeah.
don't have to like it, but we
Right.
know how we
Yeah.
roll.
And I mean, we even see it in with the P-Dub right now.
Yep.
Canada's got all their broadcast
Yeah.
partners involved, and the United States is, oh yeah, it's going to be on YouTube, which is great, but it's just very funny that like ESPN couldn't be bothered, NBC, any of the major networks couldn't be bothered to, you know, do that. And not only that, but I feel like the league itself couldn't really
I
be bothered
right.
to
That's where I was gonna
worry
go.
about American broadcasts. It's very reminiscent to me of what was going on in the C-Dub way back in the
Exactly.
day. So,
Yeah, exactly. And so to this day, we still do not we have never had a national broadcast partner for women's hockey in the United States at any level because when we watch world championships, um the Olympics is a little bit different because NBC is the monster, the behemoth that carries all of the Olympics, right? So that's a little bit different.
yeah.
But when we talk about world championships, we're getting a Canadian broadcast piped through NHL network.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
like they turn a switch on, right, and just feed us something.
Yeah.
And I think that I'll say this on the women's hockey side, I there's definitely a Canadian flair, but if you're from Canada, you're gonna show that, right? You're gonna
Yeah.
express that. Do I think that it's overtly biased? I think it's gotten better, but it was never like completely offensive to me. Like I could step outside of like, oh, they're leaning into this and be like, okay, well, Erica, they're Canadian. That's not how I felt watching Four Nations, though. I felt that the bias was extreme to the point where I'm hearing about like a 1970s, 1980s Canada Cup while Finland and Sweden are playing, and it's like 5 to 7 minutes of a play-by-play asking a former NHL analyst
Yeah.
to recount when he was 18 years old and playing Canada, and I'm like, great, those stories, those anecdotes, go
Mhm.
for it. But why do I need to hear you talk about that over the play? Like
Yeah.
to the point where you're missing the play.
Yeah, that's something that you like put at between games. That's
Right.
something that is like a post game or like a filler, like an appetizer to get you ready for a main event. That's not
Right.
something that has any place when you have talented players on the ice for both of these
Right.
teams.
Right.
And these
Who play in
teams,
the NHL. So what's your
right.
excuse? You should know their games, right?
Exactly. Like that's always been like the thing that they fall back on is that, oh well, we don't really know how they play. You know how all these men play. Let's be real. Like you just at this point don't care.
You just
So
don't care enough. You don't want
yeah,
to. You're
right.
making a choice.
Exactly. And it's really sad because it's
It's
just
so
like
sad.
you're othering players
Oh my
who
gosh.
have done so like honestly like the caliber of play in the NHL has kind of gotten to a point where not always but like I just remember or even like now watching older clips compared with some of the stuff that we see now it's undeniable the amount of influence that European hockey has had on the NHL.
Yes. Yes.
And I think it's a shame to not even attempt to honor that in any way. Like, you're telling me that you couldn't have like gotten Henrik Lundqvist on a panel, like because I don't even remember seeing him a single time. I might have been, you
Yeah.
know, not watching the right thing. I might have
Mhm.
just been watching a different broadcast, but
Yeah.
or the Sedin twins or like whoever like it's just like it was great to see Timu there, like Teemu Solani, like it was great to see him there, but like there was just so many opportunities. I feel like it was just it's like, oh yeah, we really don't care that much. This is
Yeah.
just another vehicle to kind of put like Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews in our
Well,
faces.
that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, yeah. So
And yeah. I think another thing that really ticked me off is, as I mentioned at the top, I was traveling at least for some of the Four Nations, and I follow the Seattle Kraken. I cover them for a podcast, so I was locked in for the Poland games, and I listened to the one game because Capo Caco didn't play in the first game, and he played in the second game. He nearly scored. I'm not even convinced who scored, Barkov or Capo Caco, but either way, they gave Barkov the goal. It's fine. Um, I was listening on the radio for some portion of that because I was traveling back and forth, just running errands. And on the radio broadcast, they kept saying former Rangers forward Capo Caco, like multiple times. Like, yes, he is a former Rangers player, but you know what that means?
yeah,
Especially since it's an NHL sanctioned active NHL players playing in the
he's
tournament.
playing another team.
On another freaking team. Like right now, he is on a roster. And even if you didn't know that, like you knew he was traded, but you didn't bother to see who he plays for. Oh, wait, there's a freaking sticker on the back of his helmet because, again, it's an NHL
Yeah,
event.
yeah.
Like
It's
that to me was just so wild.
yeah.
Like,
It's
what?
It's crazy. It's really crazy.
What?
I I really wish I had like a better thing to say about it, but
You're
it's
like,
just like
I mean, what is
I
there to
just
say? It's
yeah,
just,
it's like there
it's
really isn't. And it's like
disrespectful.
it is disrespectful and it's also like it's a shame because none of the players feel that way. These players all love and respect each other for the most part. I mean,
Exactly.
obviously not everybody likes each other, but
Yeah,
you
we'll
know,
get to that. We'll get to that.
yeah, but these guys, some of these guys are teammates on their
Yes.
respective
Or
NHL
have
teams
been, right? Because there were
or have
Rangers
been.
players in the freaking
Exactly.
tournament.
Exactly. Or,
Ugh.
there are players who have grown up playing each other. You had
Yes.
so much to say about Nathan McKinnon and Sidney
Ugh.
Crosby being teammates for, way back in the day and being, from Nova Scotia.
Yep.
And you have nothing to say about, let's see, like, again, I'm saying it from a Buffalo perspective because those are the two that popped up. Henry
Okay.
Okiharu and Raul Stalin facing off against each other for, I want to say the first time,
Yeah.
So it's just like,
Right.
I don't know.
There's
I don't
so
know.
many storylines that could
Mhm.
have other than, "Isn't this great that we get to see the United States and Canada pummel each other with what were definitely staged fights in 3 in the first 9 seconds?" Like,
Group
have you
chat.
have you even had a chance to get your heart rate up? Like,
Oh,
what are we
yeah.
talking about? That was so
Group chat
wild.
gate group chat gate was a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh.
Um, I think there was funny moments on both sides with that, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. As somebody who sometimes is very, like, not above seeing 3 fights in 9 seconds and getting excited because I was just sitting here laughing, like, what the hell is going on? I'm
It's
like, what
crazy.
is this right now?
Yeah.
I'm not above that, but yeah, I get it. I get it, but it's, again, I just wish that with that whole situation, honestly, that the Americans would just have kept their damn mouths shut after the fact. But
Ugh.
as we know, we Americans don't like to shut the hell up about anything. So I think that was really kind of what ruined it. I think if they hadn't gone blabbing after the fact and
Oh my
showing, like,
gosh.
oh yeah, we planned this. It's just like, how serious are you actually taking this? Like why are we going that deep? Like, it's not a 6 foot type of deal. It's definitely like a couple of inches. Like, this doesn't do anything in the grand scheme of things as far as, like, Olympic ramifications go, outside of potentially, what we can think of if the NHL does get back into the Olympics for, what is it, 2026?
Yeah, they're
They are technically, yeah,
allowing their players to do it. Like, it's
yeah.
in they're good to go.
And I did see something about that, about Dylan Larkin actually had some interesting comments about, the potential for this tournament to kind of waken up a few American guys into maybe electing to play for the Olympics in the future or in other, world championships or other international tournaments, which,
Mhm.
I think is a really interesting point to make. I think that ultimately, looking at it from that perspective, I have no problem with. Looking at it
Right.
from any other perspective, like, it's kind
Right.
of pointless.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll get to some of that because, like, storylines were definitely fabricated
Yeah.
for this tournament. I mean, they always are, but it was just like the propaganda wheel. Oh my goodness, like, it was too much. It was way too much. But we did hear from some players, especially for the United States, which one of the storylines going in, right, was that this is one of the youngest teams in the field,
Mhm.
the least amount of international competition, again, through the IIHF. But, some of these guys saying, "Hey, I wanna be considered. I wanna be considered," and,
Mhm.
I think for any bubble guys that were able to make these rosters, because again, came through from the NHL, not from their federations, so,
Right.
there's some players, I mean, are you gonna say no to Sidney Crosby? Are you gonna say no to Nathan McKinnon? Austin Matthews if they wanna play? Probably not.
That Eichel, yeah, no.
Right, exactly. That being said, there are other guys, I mean, Capo Caco said, he was like, "Yeah, I think they just ran out of finished players. I don't really know how to make a roster." Yeah, I
Oh, no.
know, he was like, "Yeah, 'cause, it's very well documented, the former Rangers player, had some issues with his team and didn't feel like he was being given a chance, but he also has been very forthcoming in saying, I didn't perform the way I wanted to." So that was interesting to hear, but
To
Capo
be
Caco,
fair, the Rangers, in general, are just kind of a hot
yeah,
mess.
they're a hot flaming
Yeah,
mess, but we're not here to talk about the
yeah.
Rangers, even though we are both New Yorkers, but I never got down with the Rangers. Not like,
No,
I was
neither
just
did
like,
I.
I mean, they're around, they're there.
They're there.
They're there, like, I know they
Yeah. They're a
exist.
team.
They're
They
a
exist.
team.
Igor
Yeah,
Shesterkin is, talented.
yeah, but speaking of the Rangers, I mean, and Lundqvist, I do wanna go back to that because he's a part of the TNT broadcasts every once in a while, so they did have him do some studio stuff which
Okay.
was great, and he was really great. I mean, I think he's fantastic.
I love him.
I don't
He's the best
care.
part of that broadcast.
Yeah, I that's not my favorite broadcast.
Right.
I mean, but also really the only one that I really enjoy listening to is the Seattle Kraken radio broadcast.
Fair.
But there's that. But I
Yeah.
want to get into the storyline that this is the storyline of the hour, what we're here to talk about, because this tournament happens to have come at a time where things between the United States and Canada, all because of the current administration, are they're a little tenuous. Things are, there were these tariffs that were coming, and then they were, postponed. We had so, the sitting administration head called Team USA. It was like, oh, just go have fun out there, or whatever he said. I don't know, like on speakerphone. I mean, I I mean, let me just put it this way, because I don't see anyone else talking about this. You could tell who was down and who was trying hard not to show any emotion, which for me says a lot.
I think so too. I think that there were some people who were like kind of pointing it out on Twitter because at the end of the
Oh yeah, I'm
day,
not out
like,
that hellscape anymore. So
true, but I'll be really honest. I the only reason I stay on Twitter, complete sidebar, aside from wanting to stick it to that fool because I was there first, bitch. Excuse my language. But aside from that, just there's still a good amount of discourse going on there that has been a little bit more productive. And also it's just funny. There are still people out there. I'm sorry, you can't tell me that the Twitter hockey girlies are not the best part of that, because they are like salutes. They like zoomed in and they were like, look at Captain Forehead here. Like it was very bad.
I mean, I was looking. He was not making direct eye contact with very much, and the camera was just trying to find him the whole time, and I felt like he knew it. I felt like
Yeah,
he knew it. He was like,
I feel like Connor Hellebuck was definitely like,
"Yes, that's
his
what
face. I was like,
yes." I was like, first of all, your game speaks for itself. Now you
right.
terrorized my Seattle Kraken, but you know what? That's not your fault. I'm gonna need them to get in the weight room or do something. I don't know.
I mean, granted, he most of the time looks like that. Like he just had that like RBF real hard. But I was like,
Yeah.
God damn, that man didn't even crack a smile.
Nope.
Like he was just there. He was
Nope.
just
And then there were people who I was like, are you sure you're going to be okay to play hockey? Like, I feel like you just fangirled out. I don't know if you're okay. Like, do you need to call your mom? Like, I don't know. Did you ask for the footage right away? And so I thought that was funny, because the thing about that is that the general manager for the United States has been speaking on behalf of the entire team, and by proxy for a lot of people, apparently the entire country, on how the United States feels about the current administration and this silly little hockey game.
Yeah. That was incredibly interesting. To be honest, I mean, at the end of the day, people were really parsing apart that whole thing. And I thought it was really funny because we're all talking about what he said, what he didn't say, and nobody seemed to have cottoned on to the fact that this man was saying it on Fox News. Like, he wasn't saying it on ESPN. He wasn't saying it on TNT. He wasn't saying it on like even the most regional of regional sports channels. He was saying it on Fox News. That alone should tell you the kind of mindset he's in. So it doesn't matter what he said or what he didn't say, although in the interest of being accurate, yeah, reading the whole quote or listening to the whole clip is important. But at the end
You're
of the
talking
day,
about Bill Guerin?
yes.
Okay. Just want to make
What
sure.
he said, what he didn't say, whatever the case may be, the fact is the platform he said it on speaks for itself.
Right. So let's just back up, because we didn't like introduce that. And that's why I was like, let me make sure I know who you're talking about.
Right.
So Bill Guerin, the general manager, we were just a moment ago talking about the actual call from the commander-in-chief, hard air quotes there, of the United States, making a call to Team USA, I guess before, after, sometime before the game.
It was the morning of, yeah.
Right. Like I was like, well, I meant before or after morning skate, but either way, so at some point in time. At some point in time. And the reason some of that came about is because, to your point, Bill Guerin was on a Fox News program and talked about the juice, right, or the fights and this, all of the stupidness that happened regarding Team USA and Hockey Canada in the preliminary round, and that was in Montreal. Another part of that has been all throughout the NHL and carried over into Four Nations is that Canadians have been booing during the Star Spangled Banner. And
That's
so I want to get back to that point because I find that endlessly interesting considering the NHL's track record on national anthems. And again, this was an NHL tournament or just hockey fans overall. But Bill Guerin, his comments were referring to him inviting the current administration head to come to the game in Boston, that he would love that the entire team are proud Americans. And also, he mentioned in passing the whole idea of the 51st state. This is something that's been coming from the current administration. And not only is the United States under this administration going to stick it to Canada and other places, including Mexico, with tariffs, but is now saying that presumably all of Canada, which, like, literally, how does that work? But all of Canada will become in mass, right? The whole thing that is literally as long as the United States is going to become the 51st state. Here are the things. First of all, that's impractical on so many levels,
of course it
geographically,
is.
politically, economically, all of the things. That's number one. Number two, you are literally sitting in Washington, D.C. And I gotta put some feelers out because Washington D.C. has for decades been on the no taxation without representation. So you literally want to take all of Canada and make them the 51st state, and then use a hockey game to fuel that discourse. And you're in Washington D.C. and you ain't got nothing to say to them. You ain't got nothing to say. You
Well,
ain't
I
got
mean, he figures himself a whole king now. I mean, we all saw that
Yeah,
bullshit.
right. Well,
So,
not all, unfortunately.
well,
Should
oh,
have. We all should have.
right. At this point, I'm operating on the assumption that our listeners are educated and know how many provinces there are in Canada. First
Oh,
off, which
dear.
I don't believe that Tangerine Palpatine does. So somebody call them that on Twitter. That's not mine,
I
but
I
I
I I
can't.
know. I think I saw that
Yeah.
same video. There were also so many others. I was like, I gotta take a list because these were good.
Oh, there's some
Um,
amazing ones for sure.
um,
But
yeah. And then, the the active president then utilizing social media to say, "Oh, I can't come," da 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 da, da, but maybe Governor Trudeau.
yeah, governor.
Governor Trudeau?
This is why I know
Excuse
this man
me?
doesn't know how many damn provinces there are in the damn
Well,
country because he
also,
doesn't even know that it is a prime minister,
no,
and
see,
Trudeau's not
that's not my
even
point. No,
in
no,
office.
no, 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 no. That's not my point. That's exactly the opposite of my point. People want to say Donald Trump is an idiot. He's not an idiot. He is a calculated, racist, misogynist, terrorizer of humans. Like, that is what he is. But he's not stupid. He used governor very clearly and deliberately in that post as to say, yes, you will become the 51st first state, and you will no longer prime minister of what? You will be a governor. And what is he doing to governors right now? He's saying you have to follow the federal mandate. The governors are saying I have to follow the Constitution and the state and local and federal law. And then he's saying I am federal law, and now wanting to take on governors for them actually standing up to the Constitution. Like, this is what's happening here. So no, that wasn't a slip up. That wasn't an F up. That's not because he's
Fair
an
enough.
idiot. It's because he's an asshole.
I mean, you can be both, but yeah, I see where you're coming from with that
Like,
for
it's
sure.
because he's an asshole.
Yeah.
That's why that was said that way. And the fact that we have people that are responsible for presenting this now very politically triggered, um, you know, tournament to us. You know, now leaning into this, the post that the president made. I'll be calling our great American hockey team this morning to spur them on towards victory tonight against Canada, which with far lower taxes and much stronger security will someday, maybe soon, become our cherished and very important 51st state. We will be speaking before the governors tonight in DC and will sadly, therefore, be unable to attend. But we will all be watching. And if Governor Trudeau would like to join us, he would be most welcome. Good luck to everyone and have a great game tonight. So exciting. President Donald J. Trump. Well, he did call the team, as we've already talked about, and they lost. So he doesn't have a great track record.
No, I also wish you would have done that in that impression voice, because that would have been hilarious. But yeah, it's interesting, and this is kind of why it's just really, really funny to me how people like the whole keep politics out of sports crowd was completely on mute.
Yep.
Or all for it, depending
Right.
on what flavor.
Oh,
But which I
not
think
even
is,
really.
I mean, it's just like, for me, again, we already knew the hypocrisy was there, so this is not surprising. It is, as
Yeah.
always, frustrating
Yeah.
and infuriating, to continuously be told that politics has no place in sports.
Right.
But also, I think we need to backtrack and just acknowledge that whenever you have competition going on between four national teams or however many national teams, there is inevitably going to be a layer of politics on it. That is why the
Right.
Olympics is so politically charged.
Yeah.
That's why every single international tournament that you could possibly think of always has an undertone of politics under it, because of the fact
Yes.
that there are national governing bodies usually associated with it. There are people who are very proud to represent their country, and as such, those people are now reflecting in microcosm the greater society, which is why we
Right.
had such an issue with Bill Guerin saying what he said.
Right.
And why we're all like, okay, well, he's not speaking for this guy or that guy or the other guy. To some extent, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that there are not players in that room who, have mediocre to really crappy politics, because I know we do. We already know that by virtue
Yeah.
of you making the money that you make and being a cisgender, presumably straight white male, there's always going to be a level to your politics that is not going to reflect, say, you or I.
Yeah.
It's unable to. You're not able to.
Right. Right. Right.
So
And that's why, again, when you have people like PK Subban, who, as far as I know, is still Canadian, but who knows, saying the Trizzy train could be coming through soon. Stay tuned.
yeah.
Now, is this in reference to, well, I mean, if again we use our context clues in this post that he is reposting on the Hellscape, um, this is in reference to him already saying he will not be in attendance. So it's not like he's saying, "Oh, looks like maybe the Trizzy train." What is that? And I don't want to know. Like what? I don't. That's so weird. It's not even. I just find it weird. Anyway, this little, because I have. Anyway, whatever. This is it can't be. I mean, unless maybe he misunderstood, which I guess is possible. But how could this possibly be about Donald Trump coming to a hockey game? But where could this Trump train be headed to Canada? Like, is this him leaning into the 51st state thing? It's just really random, but that's okay. That's okay, because we have someone else from Canada who had the time, made
He had
time,
time today.
made some time. And says, Akeem Alu says, I've watched you from afar and never said anything for two main reasons. One being the respect I have for your brothers and parents, aka not you. And Two, I've always wanted to keep the fighting between folks of color to a minimum. This was something I couldn't let go. I've known you since, okay, it gets long here, but the
Do you want
reason,
to take over?
yeah, and listen, I will say, I think this is an interesting comment. And Akeem is an interesting person. I'll just say it that way. This is the reason why every place you've ever played, no one liked you, and the players on the inside have always known who you really are. A sellout of the highest proportions. You are the perfect example of why people of color haven't progressed at the highest levels of society. From one man to another, you're a disgrace, and history will judge you accordingly. Like, dang,
That
that's
was deep.
yeah, there's a lot of layers to this that I can't even pretend to break down because I mean, Akeem breaks it down a little bit by saying
Mhm.
this is personal. Like, and again, it's a long letter.
I mean, well, to make it, to break it down, I guess in the most basic of terms, Akeem and PK played together when they were kids, and so he's kind of seen the progression. Basically, he made note of, and this is why I kind of said on Twitter, Akeem Aliu just Kendrick PK Subban, because that was extremely how it felt.
Yeah,
It was very much, hey, listen, I've seen the way you operate, and I've
right.
seen the way you've operated for years. It's never been honest. It's never been authentic. It's always only ever been for your own benefit. And here you are doing it again.
Yeah,
So here, I'm just going to lay it out on the table. None of us F with you. And
basically.
this is why.
He
Um,
said, "Hey Drake."
he did. He did. He
Hey
said
Drake.
they not like us in Canadian.
Ooh,
Like that's
In
essentially what he
Canada. In
like.
Canada.
He literally said that, and that's why it was like,
Hey Drake.
oh,
He said,
like it was
"Oh,
definitely that feeling.
yeah."
It was like and the thing is, the parallels are there. I
They
mean,
are. I mean, they are.
that's
I
the
mean,
crazy part, you
yeah,
know.
even during this most sensitive time, both politically and socially, you take the side of the oppressor because that's who you make your money from. I would have thought the love you have always claimed for your country, a country you represented at the highest levels, would shine through to push back the rhetoric of annexation and humiliation of the very land you are born and raised in. But even that doesn't get you to do the right thing morally.
Yeah,
Like,
that was a lot. That was a lot,
there's a
and
lot. There's a lot.
honestly, I think it hits harder because he knows PK. It's not like just
Yeah.
you or me saying it. Or even just some random Canadian person saying it. It's somebody who knows this guy and has seen him, up close and personal. So, for me, it was just like kind of cathartic to read because it's like, oh my God, finally somebody kind of put into words how I've always kind of felt. Because personally speaking, and I'm speaking as somebody who is obviously not a Black person, but is a person of color and is somebody who, I feel very strongly about the fact that diversity belongs in hockey and inclusion belongs in hockey. And there's so much structural change that needs to be done, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been in this space for as long as I have. I've been watching hockey for 20 years now. So, but I started out loving PK just because of what I felt he represented at a certain point in time. I feel like there was a point in time where he really was not afraid to be himself. He was not afraid to be goofy. He wasn't afraid to, be a little flamboyant, be a little bit more out there with his personality. And in a space where we are so used to guys being all homogenous, all the same, kind of the same canned answers, the same like head down celebrations, you know, it was a breath of fresh air at one point.
Yeah.
But there's always, as he's gotten bigger and bigger and his platform has expanded, I've always wanted him to do more and say more than just the most basic surface level stuff regarding representation or race or any kind of advocacy. Because unfortunately, we live in a society where if you are a marginalized person and you do end up with that big of a platform, the responsibility grows in terms of you, at the very least, wanting to be that example of, okay, this is how we can work to make this better for everybody who comes after. And he never really did that. And now we know why, I think. So, and I want to be like very, like, I never really said much, like, because obviously I don't know him personally. Not no, neither of us do. I also feel like there is always a level of caution, at least for starting out when you're navigating in a space that is mostly white. And you are a melanated person, you have to kind of, at least to start, you have to kind of navigate that with a certain amount of caution if you really want to kind of, keep yourself in the game, so to speak. But at this point, he is probably one of, if not the highest profile Black man in the sport currently. And it becomes bigger than him, and it becomes bigger than what his earning potential is or anything like that. And he dropped the ball and he dropped the mark. And I feel like, at that point, what Akeem you had to say was incredibly important, because at some point, you have to realize that the person that, you may have thought that this guy was is just not ever going to be anything other than somebody who kind of works in league with people who other him and will continue to other him. It doesn't matter how long he's been there. It doesn't matter whatever points he has to make. He's always going to be seen as something other than what, his counterparts are. And now he's alienated himself from his own community, so to speak. So
yeah, indeed. And Daryl, I don't know what you're talking about. I literally don't understand, because you've already made a few basketball references and we're talking about hockey. So also BUT, the extra T is not needed. Because yeah, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, very strange in the comments, but thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, this is
not that we're not talking about Curry, the person, or the food, or Stewie.
We're talking curry, though.
I love curry. I actually might make some later.
Actually, you know what will be really good right now? Like some Thai green curry. Ooh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, now we're talking about Curry, but we're not talking about Steph Curry. We're not talking about Stewie. We're talking about basketball. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. So we're just gonna keep talking. Yeah, I like you said, I don't even know if I've actually even met PK Subban. I don't know. Obviously the Subban history, the family, and Akeem kind of alluded to, his brothers. He also has a sister that's in hockey. Did some stuff for the, I don't know if is still doing stuff for the Reagan, right?
Is she a sister or a cousin? I can't remember.
Or a cousin. Maybe. Okay. Well, the lineage in hockey exists. Apologies if I got the connection.
Right. I mean, they're a known family.
Yeah. They're a known family in hockey, very well known also because, like akin to, if you know the Williams sisters and their story, and just a family really leaning into wanting to find a way culturally through sport. And well, I think that's more of the Subban story. I think the Williams story is about finding a way to make it through life through sport, and through their circumstances, and being able to utilize that gift.
Yeah, I think the difference is, I feel like the Williams sisters were trying to make tennis more ingratiating for them, whereas the Subban family might be more trying to mold themselves within the sport of hockey. I
think that's probably accurate, and that's true. Like, again, I can't speak for all of the Subbans, but what we do know about the Williams, what I know about the Williams sisters is exactly what you're saying. Like, it was like they brought their full selves, to the point where, if we go back to Kendrick and that event that I don't watch because I thought we all learned our lesson about the NFL a long time ago, where even though they finally agreed to pay out CTE lawsuits, they were for a time not paying them equally because Black players weren't as intelligent before they got their brain injuries. And that's just scientific proof. Yes, that's what the NFL literally said through their lawyers in court documents. But sure, go off, continue to watch that sport. Great. Love that.
Granted, I mean, the NHL's track record is not great with that.
It's not great. No, I know that as well. Absolutely know that as well. As far as I know, that's not where they are with their lawsuits. Now, will they take a page out of the NFL book? Probably. Wouldn't be surprised. that would be unfortunate on many, many levels, including that we are just out here being bold with our
Mhm.
racism. But anyway, yeah, so I don't think from what I know of the Subban family that you can say the exact same thing for them, but we have known PK to be involved in things of that nature. But I think what this underscores for me, and again, I have my not curiosities, what am I trying to say? I have my reservations, I suppose, is more accurate. I have my reservations about Akeem, including some of the equity work that he's done that literally did not include any women to begin with.
Right.
And from what I had understood, even when women were reaching out or mentioned, it took a while to be like, oh yeah, we mean you, we mean you too. So I'm just putting that out there. I'm not, so I don't need to cap for nobody in this argument is what I'm saying.
Right.
That being said, what I will underline is, and what hockey culture doesn't do very well, and that's where I think Akeem's voice for some people has been very welcoming. For some people, it's been very worrisome, is that he has been a part of the folks that say the quiet part out loud. As far as on the like, we're sounding the whistle because
Mhm.
like I'm tired of this. Like I'm tired of what
Right.
I've had to go through. I'm tired of people saying hockey and the hockey community is one thing when it's really not. And I think that's what this underscores. It's very personal. And
Mhm.
I mean, again, I can't speak to that. I don't even know that I needed all of that. But what I will underscore is that, and why I wanted to have this conversation is I will make it very clear. And Angelica, of course, I know that you will chime in with your thoughts as well, but what's happening and how it seeped into Four Nations is not, it's not a joke.
No.
It's
Not
not cute. It's not locker room talk.
no.
This is a very calculated person continuing to be bullish about egregiously harmful, racist, sexist maneuvering as president of the United States.
Absolutely. I think that I mean it's not just us who feel that way. I know that there are plenty of people listening who feel the same way. I've
Yeah.
seen the comments all over that where it's like this was a fun tournament and now it's completely gone into a downward spiral because this man can't shut the hell up for 2 seconds. And he's going to stop at nothing to use any little bit of national representation or national pride or whatever the case may be that he can in
Yep.
order to um, make himself look a certain way or to glorify himself or to whatever it is. I'm saying whatever a lot because I'm girl. It's just we never really know what the hell's going on in that man's brain. Not a
Never,
whole lot,
never,
but
never know.
that being said, it is very much a calculated move. And I think
Yeah.
that I kind of always felt like it was going to be. And that was
Mhm.
why, as much as I like some of these players on the team, and I have unfortunately come to like some of them less after, I have definitely had my reservations about rooting for Team USA because of
Oh
this.
yeah. Oh
Because
yeah.
ultimately, I knew that it was going to come to this. Again, you can't separate politics from hockey, especially when it comes to a tournament like this. It's an international tournament, it's bound to happen. And so the fact that he did stoop that low to, well, I don't know. The fact that he did use it in that way is not shocking. The response, of course, I don't think it's really shocking as much as it is just exhausting.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and
perfect. Yeah.
it's just another way of people using something that's supposed to be fun and
Mhm.
turning it into just nonsense. And again, even though we like to say that we use hockey as an escape, it never really is.
No,
Um,
and especially for people who have been pushed out to the margins of
right,
hockey culture of society.
right,
And yeah, it was like, okay, the nationalism. to an extent, sure, be proud of where you're from. But when it seeps into other things and, people wanting to have, again, conversations regarding booing the Star Spangled Banner, JD Vance, who's the acting now vice president, just saying outlandish things and saying, we're going to make the tariffs, however many times higher, and then using expletives to basically say how the United States is going to crush Canada in again a hockey game that has no significance
Right.
really
That's
except
the
for what
thing.
they've created. And also, just again, we do want to remind everyone that the United States lost to Canada 3-2 in overtime.
Yes, it was I think at the end of the day, it was very much, okay, awesome, love this. I wasn't even mad about it. I
I
can't be
I
mad
wasn't mad at all. I will say, there were 2 things that made me mad about enjoying seeing the United States lose because of all of this that we're talking about. 1, Marchand. 2, Binnington.
yes! Okay, because I thought like literally, I am like OG, like literally, I never ever ever want to root for Jordan Binnington ever in my life, and the fact that I had to is
Yeah, I
absolutely
was
destroying me.
I
Like,
was not okay.
as an Avs fan, as somebody who saw that stupid shit that he pulled with Naz Kadri that led to all those threats, I just I can't. As I just
Yeah,
he is just a
right.
certified you know
Right.
what.
So
So
even though I do feel that the country I happen to have been
right.
born in, the United States, was 1000% wrong in escalating this craziness, Canada, let's not act like we don't know about you either. Because I made a reference to, oh wow, look at this. Canadian hockey fans at NHL games are booing during the national anthem. So you do understand the significance that creating and making a statement such as, I don't know, taking a knee or raising a
Mhm.
fist. So you do have an understanding of why taking a stance because of the political and social, socioeconomic issues happening in real time. So you do understand that, right?
Yeah. Of
You
course they
just didn't
do.
appreciate it. You didn't support it. You didn't give a damn when it was Black people or people wanting to call attention to
Mhm.
Black people being murdered in the you didn't want to focus on that. You didn't want to focus on end racism. You didn't want to focus on Black lives, but you do understand
Mhm.
why disrupting the Star Spangled Banner holds significance. So I'm glad we're here. And I
It's
got
the
a
whole free
comment.
speech for me, not for thee thing. It's
Right.
that
I got a comment saying, well, in fairness, that was the
in
first
fairness, what?
like you could
None
have
of
stopped
this is
right there.
fair.
You could have stopped right there.
None
Like
of this
in
is
fairness, nothing. Like if you're starting out anything after what I just said with in fairness, like
It's the
get
same
gone.
thing as, oh, don't
Get
boo the
gone.
anthem. Yeah, don't boo the anthem because this is about supporting the military. First of all, the U.S. military's involvement in professional sports is
Is literally paid for by tax dollars.
it
So
is,
that
yes,
part.
and it's a conversation for an entirely different episode that I would love to have one day because
Right. It's
ultimately
like,
I think it's
congratulations, you
disgusting.
paid for
Yeah,
patriotism.
right.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Oh,
So number one, it
because
was
it apparently it didn't
never
exist before the 90s. So like,
exactly. It's not
grr,
something that we
grr,
ever. Grr! It's
grr.
not something that we did religiously, I should say. Like in what you guys
I
mean.
know what you mean.
Second of all, um, you don't want that, but it's totally okay for Military Appreciation Night to exist. It's totally okay for First Responders Night to exist. When we say first responders, we really mean police, but we know that that's not kosher. So we're gonna just
It's like, I
pretend that it's
guess,
all first
yeah,
responders.
we'll
No,
include the
it's
lifesavers
a
in
freaking
hospitals and
propaganda
firefighters
night.
also.
All right,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
propaganda night.
Yes, exactly.
So, that's totally fine. But booing the anthem, oh my God, it's so
That's where it crossed.
disrespectful. We ask
Right.
that you kindly respect the anthems. For freaking why?
For
All right.
what?
Is the United States and current sitting administration respecting Canada? Hell no. But
Yeah,
it's always
it's
an issue when
wild.
somebody responds. It's
Exactly.
never
When
an
someone
issue.
else does something. And so it was like, well, in fairness, I was like, you lost me within fairness, but it was like, well, in fairness, our prime minister has done baka baka ba, and I forget what they were talking about, because also I was like, oh, we're talking about your
We'll
prime
talk
minister
about that
now.
on your
Oh,
own.
right, go do that. I wasn't talking about your prime minister. I was talking
Exactly.
about NHL arenas and the
So that makes
understanding
it
of.
okay. Like,
Right. Not to mention, I was like, well, first of all, I believe your prime minister also has a history of wearing blackface. But again, that's not what I'm talking about. So let's put that to the side and get to what I'm actually talking about. And then one person in the comment was also like, well, I think they also said something else. They said something where I was also like, why? But it was like, well, as a white hockey fan, I was like, okay, I didn't ask. I don't know why you told me. And
literally, this
I really don't know
conversation is
why
not
that
finished.
matters. I don't know
Right.
why that matters. And then it was like, well, what should I do? What resources should you point me to? And I literally typed, I was like, maybe you should listen to everything that we have been saying for the last, I don't know, 400 years.
I
Maybe
was
start there. Maybe
The
start
thing is,
there.
you don't even need to go that far back. It's not like we haven't been having this conversation for literally the past however many years at this point. Like, I know I've been having this conversation for at least 10 to 15 years.
Like,
I
don't
mean,
act new. Don't act new. Like,
yeah,
I'm not doing the work for you. Like, you can like, search engines are free, babes.
it's just like,
Um,
as a white hockey fan, what you could do is not engage in conversations that are not about you. And what you can do is open up a goddamn book and start reading.
like,
Like,
hello. Hello.
it's just we live in
Yeah.
an age of information. This is supposed to be the information and technology age, and
And
we
yet,
continue to use technology to be freaking dumbasses on the internet.
idiots, just idiots all over the internet. I
Too
love
many
that.
people come on here and say the most ridiculous things
It's
and then expect
crazy.
us to be calm and demure and
Right.
cutesy
Demure.
and just very
Demure.
compassionate and
Um,
willing to entertain your nonsense, and that's not
it's
gonna
so
happen.
wild.
I'm
It's
sorry.
so just wild.
It's
Also,
just like,
not related at all. I do love the comeback of demure. Like, people are using it absolutely wrong, but I mean, it's just fun.
yes,
But
it is
that
a, it's a great
it's a
it's a
great
good word.
callback.
It's
It's
a
a
good
great
word.
callback.
I personally have never been demure in my life. I am a goddamn gremlin and
Yeah.
proud of it, but
Oh, come on.
I just, I love that for
Like,
them.
I
I
love that
do.
for
I
y'all.
love that
Be
for y'all.
demure, be
That's
lean
great.
into it, embrace
I am
it.
a
I love it.
menace, but
Ghost, hey, this is a
those.
elite. Yes, I went off on elite the other day on one of
I
our
also wanted
podcasts.
to make a really good point because I was thinking about this back in the day when somebody had mentioned PK's comments about, I think it was a couple years back, about pride jerseys when that whole discussion was
Oh
happening,
dear, I can't even
and
remember.
talking about how and this ties back to the greater community where we talk about advocacy and his comments about advocacy being something that you can't force and that something that has to be comfortable for people,
I
when
vaguely remember
the
now. Yeah.
very point of advocacy is discomfort and growth, because that's how you grow, is through discomfort. You realize, oh crap, I don't want to be this person, I don't want to be in this situation, so I'm going to work to make a better situation. That's where growth comes from. And somebody who, from my from my memory, has definitely attended at least one Black Girl Hockey Club event where their whole pledge is to get uncomfortable. It's very interesting work coming from him. But again, it goes back to the whole idea of he's never really been for the people. He's only ever been for PK, because he's only ever talked about race and representation when it suited him. He's only ever talked about advocacy the way he wants to do it. And he's only ever talked about pride in the LGBTQ community in a way that shows that he doesn't
Yeah.
really give a shit about anything.
Damn. Yeah, I remember the one time he really leaned into it is because his brother experienced something.
Right.
Um,
And he
and
showed up in a whole damn Black Panthers getup. I remember
yeah,
that.
well,
That whole symbolism and that whole imagery, you're going to use that, but then you're going to
yeah,
turn around and talk about the tribute
yeah.
a couple of years later.
Oh, gross. Gross.
That to
I mean, it's
me,
also worth noting that a lot of the work that he did, which followed him, I believe, at least in Nashville, was a community work, but that was very much linked to law enforcement. I don't
Oh, yeah, I
remember
remember that too.
exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that it's not a solution that can be utilized. I will say that personally, it's not one that I would lean into first.
No,
But I
or
guess
ever.
do
They have enough
you
support. They get enough of my
do you
tax
boo?
dollars. I don't feel the need to,
Yeah. So, I mean, but again, I want to make it clear just for anyone that's watching this. And yes, we slay and melt everything. Thank you.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
But I do want to make it clear because even though PK is a part of this conversation, Akeem as well, they are not the conversation.
No,
It's an
it's bigger than
entry point into other things. And I did want to, and so for those who are part of our Slack community, at Black Rosie Media, we do now have a dedicated space for ding ding ding, sports are political. And one of the things that I also wanted to mention is that the Canadian anthem singer for the Four Nations Face-Off Championship game actually made a statement of her own and talked very openly about changing the anthem lyrics, which for some people is a very, well, whatever. But I think that some of the ways it's been changed have been pretty great, um,
absolutely.
including our home on native land has to be my favorite. Has to be my
Yeah,
favorite.
absolutely.
Um,
Also the, ingratiation that I don't know that the NHL has taken on, but when the PHF was a thing, it definitely took on the, anthems being sung in not just English, but French and also Cree,
yeah.
which was really big. Also,
Yes,
yes,
I have mine in the closet here. I've got
I thought it
my
was appropriate.
Juneteenth
Absolutely.
shirt on. I
I
love
thought it
that.
was appropriate to wear
Absolutely.
this today, so,
That's it, that's it.
yeah.
Yeah, but the Canadian anthem singer, just talking about how given everything that we were just talking about regarding, um, the 51st state comment and everything that's happening, with the now kind of stalled tariffs, but I'm sure after this loss, because when has he ever taken a loss? Well, things will pick up. During the 3-2 Canada.
It's giving UMG lawsuit
Oh
energy.
my gosh. During uh the Chantal is the singer's name. She changed the lyric from "In all of us command" to "That only us command" during Canada's 3-2 overtime victory. She told the AP that she did it, quote, "because I believe in democracy." Interesting. "And a sovereign nation should not have to be defending itself against tyranny and fascism." I think we can all lean into that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is what we have seen and what I think we will see moving forward here. Again, some people might say, "Oh, well, this is only a hockey game." Again, the hockey game is just where everything is living and stewing. There are things happening outside of hockey. And
I've
I
said
also
it.
I also just wanted to bring up the 1936 Olympics because I talked about this on a podcast the other day. And I think what we're seeing is that we have athletes that, and this is not something that has gone away since 1936, and it existed before. Jesse Owens ran in Berlin, won a bunch of gold medals as Hitler watched in a tizzy. And there were other events in that. So I think, isn't it the Boys in the Boat book that then now is a movie? It talks about the rowers from Washington and some of the things that were done during those Berlin Olympics
Mm,
to try to cater to what Hitler and his cronies wanted to see as success, as opposed to just letting the athleticism speak for itself. So,
right.
again, sports, politics, they go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
But I think what stands out to me, and I wonder how things will continue to go now that, again, in theory, we should have access to more education. Not that everyone utilizes that, but we also have instantaneous access to each other, which you have to sift through. Be careful, don't get got out there in the streets. But I think that people are utilizing their resources to make very clear and succinct through lines to what has happened in the past and where things are headed, given the rhetoric and the executive orders that we are seeing passed day after day after day in the United States.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I think that things are just going to get even more charged from here. I don't think that we can see this. We can see this as a beginning of what's to come. And I just seeing the legislation that's come down against trans athletes. Seeing the legislation that is probably going to come down in the future. It's very much, and again, I want to, not only is it bigger than one person or one sport, it's sports are a microcosm of greater society. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it until I'm blue in the face and probably die from lack of oxygen. But sports are political because people are political. We have, unfortunately, we live in a society where people's existences have been made political.
And
I don't
people
go.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was like, I exist as a woman. I exist as a Latina. I exist as a queer Latina. And my existence has been made political by virtue of the fact that there's legislation passed on my body almost every single day.
Yes.
To the point where if I want to leave Buffalo, which I have been talking about for a while, if I want to leave, I have to now think of where I can go, where my rights are protected. That is not something I asked for. That's not something that I think any marginalized group asked for. This is something that the dominating class has put on us and now wants to be mad about, that it's affecting their precious little sports.
Right. Exactly.
It just doesn't compute to me. And it's like, if you didn't want this to be political, y'all shouldn't have made it political.
Mind your neck, then.
Y'all should have just minded your own business, ate your damn food, and just stayed away from any kind of rights dictating against our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And yet, we continue to see it unfurling. Again, I mentioned in passing, I believe it was the governor of Massachusetts had a little bit of a spat because remember, the administration could not go to the Four Nations championship game because they were meeting with the governors. And in said meeting with the governors, some of the governors stood up to the president. With regard to some of the things that even you just alluded to, Title IX has been a huge issue as far as just overall. But when you mentioned, also transgender rights and how that, or LGBTQ overall, and the intersect of politics and what we're seeing, but specifically right now with this administration, the first blow has certainly been to our transgender brothers and sisters. And it's just it's unfortunate that even with so much evidence, including the words spoken by the man himself, there are people in denial. And I do think that there are still a fair amount of people who are truly just ignorant and maybe even overwhelmed by the political system. I do think also that there are people who will feign ignorance because they know exactly how they feel and what they think. And they have what they believe is the privilege to not insert themselves into a conversation because the powers that be are for now not coming for them.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just all of this is intersected, right? All of this, there's layers and layers and layers upon layers to this. When we have diluted our media powers to a fraction of what they started out as, when we have dumbed down our education to a level where, people are graduating. Yeah, sure, kids are graduating, but they're unable to read at even the most, age appropriate levels possible, never mind beyond that. Right. When media literacy is at an all-time low, when AI is being implemented more and more into every facet of our lives, it becomes extremely easy not only to become fatigued by all the effort that you have to put into to even live a life that's ever anywhere close to the reality that you face, but it becomes a situation where not all of us, unfortunately, feel like we're at a point where we can care about it, because not only is all of this going on, but the economy is failing in front of us. Inflation is at an all-time high. Job market is horrible,
It's
and
really bad.
people have more debt now than ever. So they're just focusing on trying to figure out how they're going to make it from one day to the next, from 1 hour to the next. They're not worried about everything else. And so I think that feeds into the idea of, okay, I'm dealing with all of this other mess. All I want to do is sit down and watch a hockey game. And now here's this stupid, emperor oompa loompa looking mother
Yeah.
effer
Emperor
telling
and
us that,
stuff.
oh, Canada's going to be annexed and become the 51st state and da, 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 and our great hockey team. And
What
it's
does
just
that even mean? Like, what does that even
I
mean?
don't know, bro. Like, I've never
It's so
operated an IQ low enough
nonsensical.
to understand that, so I'm just gonna like leave that there.
And
Like, I
it's just, but it's you know what I think I find fascinating, and I truly mean this. I find it fascinating that bro dudes across the world, because this is not just a US thing. I mean,
no,
we already talked about PK. But bro dudes across the world, if there are certain words that are jumbled, no matter how nonsensically together, it's like a bat signal.
mm,
And I'm just like, where did they teach? Like I went to a
I think
health
that's why so
class.
many people like ChatGPT. Has to
Hey,
be.
listen, also, like, I'm so serious when I'm telling you I am looking into resources to have a conversation about AI on Black Rosie Media, because everyone's like, "Do AI, do AI, do AI." And I'm like,
Absolutely not.
"Excuse me, you do realize that AI is created by a system that is inherently flawed and racist and transphobic and sexist and all of these things, xenophobic. You do realize that. And now you
And
want
not only
me
that,
to use it?"
yeah, and not only that, but the environmental impacts are countless. So why would you want that? Why would
Yeah,
you, as somebody
girl.
who purports to support people, because again, we don't even talk that much about how any kind of ecological disaster disproportionately affects poor communities, communities of color, and other marginalized identities.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's just like,
Building an urban farm in my apartment, thanks. But
hey,
yeah, but I mean, anyway, the things that are just understood are wild to me. Like, and I'm truly fascinated by it, because that is like a deep-seated coded, because here's the thing, like, we know where this started. If you literally go back to this country, and remember, the founding fathers also immigrants, direct lineage, but anyway, um but if you go back to like all of these secret societies and things, of it's like, okay, you can understand that up to a certain part of US history. But then where did this, where did they, and then you look at like segregation laws and, reconstruct, and you're like, okay, well, maybe, okay, that had some, but like, where does, and then Chat GPT, to your joke, like, sure, but also that wasn't a thing, but
right.
every decade, every generation seems to know when certain things are said, this is what is going down. Like, do they have their own version of like, the songs that were sung in the fields? Like, what is it? Is it just like, okay, I'm going to get more mayo? Like, what is it? I need to know. I
Well,
need to
I mean,
know.
it's I think it goes back to like the whole idea of dog whistle politics and things like that, where it's just like, things become coded, things become twisted, things become symbols of, other nefarious things, and it's just a way for them to speak in a language that is understood only to them, but we kind of see what's going on and we kind of
Right.
feel the vibe is not good.
Right.
I am not gonna sit here and act like I I don't know. It's very frustrating to me, and I also feel like it puts, getting back to the whole hockey aspect of it, I think it puts a lot of these hockey players also at a disadvantage, because you have people who consume this sport in a critical manner, and who maybe are not maybe they don't understand that, you know, these hockey players are not well versed in this type of thing. And so, you know, I think that, oh, what's the point I'm trying to make? I think what I'm trying to say is that it's just, it is very much a ripple effect. I think that we can't expect anybody, you know, on a professional level in the NHL, first of all, to say anything about it. We're the ones who have to say things about it. But of course, we're up against this entire behemoth that is the age of disinformation, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think going back, I think my original point was that it kind of puts the players at a disadvantage because the majority of these guys didn't finish college or even go. You know, so I think that it makes it very easy for them as well to kind of fall into this trap of, you know, we want to project our politics onto them, and we want to think that, you know, maybe because they went to a pride parade, or because they put pride tape on their stick, or because they said this one thing in support of, you know, Black Lives Matter, that they know what's up. A lot of them don't. And it again reflects the greater society. It reflects that idea of,
I
you
mean,
know, us largely being ignorant.
I will also just add, because, you know, I think high school degrees and the proximity to politics is a lot of times, honestly, it people make arguments that then they use the same argument as a counter. And I'm like, okay, well, which is it? Is it that this group isn't educated or this group isn't educated? And that's why they are on this side. And that's why, you know what I'm saying? But what I think is the more important point is that even regardless of how much education these NHL players have, which I think we should put on the shelf, because there are highly educated people, you know, traditionally, quote unquote, educated people, multiple degrees, that are still on that trizzy train, right? So,
True.
what is the more salient point is the proximity to wealth.
True.
And that don't always require an education or even legal status. And I'm using legal in air quotes, but I'm pointing to you, Elon.
Yeah.
The person, not the school that I, unfortunately, because of the landscape now, happen to have gone to. I love my time at Elon University, but then I can't just say Elon, because now who knows what I'm
You
talking
say
about.
Elon too many times in a row, and a dude wearing a backwards hat driving a Cybertruck pulls
Oh
up and
my
it's like, "Well,
gosh.
actually,"
Yeah. Yeah, which is
um,
interesting because, like, now I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which apparently was one of the final cities to have that, you know, crazy truck company move in here. And I'm like, well,
I see one every so often. One time I saw 2 in a day, and I was like, "Oh my god, what deity do I have to pray
I
to?"
listen,
Because
yeah, those things are
that's an omen.
hideous. They're hideous.
They're
Also,
disgusting.
have you seen that video of the Cybertruck getting stuck in the snow, and then, like, this
In
Prius,
Montreal.
it wasn't Montreal, I don't know
I
where it
think it
was.
was. It was like 2 inches of snow or something
It's
like
like,
that.
what the crap? And there was literally happened to be a Prius that was, like, waiting, and then they were like, "You know what? You're not going anywhere. I'm just gonna zoom around you."
I know. I'm like, when my little low to the ground tin can Chevy Cruze can make it through more snow than your stupid ass Cybertruck, we got problems.
But again, these are things that become, like, they become the fodder, right? They become a part of the conversation. But do
Right.
you think, I'll put it on me, I am not convinced that any of the business moves that either one of these fools were talking about had anything to do with quality. They had everything to do with,
Yeah.
again, wealth
Of
and
course. Yeah.
positioning to not pay as much as possible to other people to hoard money for
Well, I
themselves.
mean, he's the head of the Department of Governmental Efficiency for a reason. I mean, it's
Just
always been
so,
about they think they're running this like a business. They're really not. They're just being stupid. But
also, that's
it's
not the point of government, you
it's
freaking
not.
idiot.
But that's the thing, is that they don't realize that, or they do and they just don't give a shit because
Right.
they're turning this country
And
into an
again, this is a larger conversation, because if you look at the US history, some of
Mhm.
this is the collective, it's our fault,
Yeah,
because the what's in the Constitution and then how that has been manipulatively interpreted, that's not a word,
interpret.
interpreted. I was like, I heard it coming out and I was like, Erica, that's not That's not real. Catch it. Nope, I can't. It's out. It's like it needs to get out so then I can reset. Like I was like, that's not right. Interpreted. Canada.
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 That's what my aunt says. Canada.
Canada.
I love it.
Oh
But
dear.
no, I get what you're saying. As far as the proximity to wealth goes, I do think that is a big portion of it. I think also you got to look at, again, hockey being a majority white, cisgender, presumably straight male sport. These men are not going to have the same level of lived experience as, say, you or I will, or even, let alone, a Black counterpart of theirs. They're not going to have that same experience. And so they're not going to think of it as anything more than maybe just a joke or something that's not super serious, or it can't affect me, so I'm not going to worry about it.
Right.
It's kind of to your point where like nobody really gives a damn unless it impacts them or until it impacts them.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that, again, it does a disservice to a lot of us who are in marginalized communities and want to root for these guys because, we like the way they play or we like the personalities or whatever the case may be. But it just, that's just the reality of the situation. And I think that that's why I can kind of look a little bit more, I can look at these guys in a little bit more of a detached manner because of the fact that even those with quote unquote good politics, they still have that proximity to whiteness and proximity to wealth that is going to keep them from ever truly understanding. And they're too insulated at this point from it, even I think in a way that keeps them from being fully political, that in a way that's unique to hockey, because we see other things. Like I'm not saying that the NBA or the NFL or whoever, I'm not saying that there aren't other professional leagues that don't also fall into this pit, but I think that hockey, professional hockey, men's professional hockey is very, very susceptible to it, and also women's professional hockey to an extent, very much. I think that the NHL is so far behind in that aspect because of, again, the homogeneity, and also I think the culture that compels these players to conform is a little bit unique to hockey as well.
Yes.
So
Very well said.
It's very much that. And so I think about that and I'm like, okay, as much as I want to love guys like, I'm not going to throw names out there, but as much as I want,
are there more than a few?
No, I mean, as much as it's just any player, I love so many NHLers, just by virtue of the personality that I see, that they allow me to see.
But, or like, dare we say their actual hockey game? Because yes, I can enjoy a hockey game, and don't always need it to be political. But what I can't stand is when you tell me that something that's inherently political isn't political,
not,
while then also leaning into all of this.
And that's not a hypocritical thing to do.
No, it just is what it is. You can acknowledge it. You
can separate somebody. It's like, there's been criticism of the way that, I don't know about you, but I've gotten criticism for the way that I've discussed certain players in the PHF or PWHL, such as Kelly Babstock, for example. And, people don't seem to understand that there is a level and there is a certain type of nuance to discussing the player that they are on the ice and the person that they are off of it. Sometimes those things are intertwined. I mean, at the end of the day, Kelly Babstock's not out here wearing a certain number because it reminds them of their favorite bigot. So, which Colleen Murphy has done, and also Britta Curl seems to be doing. But it's very much that whole idea. And I just in that respect, it's just like there's certain battles that you got to pick, and there's certain things that you have to bring up. And at the end of the day, I'm not discrediting anybody's feelings. I'm not trying to invalidate anybody who doesn't like Kelly Babstock for the things that she said or done. I'm just telling you where I'm coming from with it, and I think that that's another big problem, is that there's so little room for nuance, and that as I'm getting older and as I'm getting a little bit more like, I don't want to say like wise, but I guess wise.
Grounded, right?
Yeah, it's just there's a certain realism that you have to adhere to. There's a
Yeah.
certain level of realistic thinking. Um,
Yeah.
and the realistic thinking for me is that regardless of who did vibe with what PK said or what that, Tangerine called about or said, whoever does or doesn't resonate
Uh,
with it, at the end of the day, they still are hockey players. They still are on a completely different level
yeah.
from myself as an ordinary citizen. And so
Yeah.
they are never going to fully understand the weight of what something
Right.
like this does and what kind of ripple
Right.
effect it has.
And the separator is, well, there's several, but there are some players that know that, and there are players that don't know that. There are
Right.
players that know that and are they can carry empathy, and there are players that know that and want to retain and even from their perspective improve, right, the current
Yeah.
situation, or
You
at
know?
least through their actions, and the support that it would indicate that they want to do some
Yeah.
of those things. And then
Yeah.
there are also people who, like, regardless of how I identify, I have a curiosity for other cultures, other people. And I'll be honest, like when someone calls me out for something, including when I literally had no working knowledge, and was ignorant to something, yeah, I get you. I'll talk for myself. I've gotten internally defensive, like, why would they say
Absolutely.
that? Don't they
Absolutely.
know that I do this, this, and this? I'll be honest, like I've had
Yeah.
those internal thoughts, like a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Then I was like, hold on, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Someone brought you a piece of information. You had a
Mm-hmm.
you felt a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
If this person, one, took the time out to acknowledge that, but also took the time out to say that this is harmful to me and or a group of people, does it hurt me or go against my moral compass to now in like widen my radius to include this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does it, and for me at least, because I don't use my religion as a shield for things I don't like. In fact, the way that I engage with the religion that I have chosen, I was also very much, by birth, had the proximity to it, but I have chosen a religion, and my faith is guiding me in certain things. And the way I know my faith, it doesn't. Someone can offer information to me, and I can say, you know what? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly don't even go with this wasn't my intention. I say thank you for bringing this to my attention. I will operate accordingly.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's really all most people are asking for.
And it's as simple as that, but I feel like there are so many people who have not learned to regulate their emotions and also not learned that sometimes you're not as enlightened as you think you are.
Hello.
And that's fine.
We're
That's
humans.
not a testament to a moral failing of some sort, but yet people want to act like it is, because I think the appearance of being a good person to a lot of people is
Boom.
more important than actually being a good
And
person.
because the being a good person takes work.
Exactly.
Or being
I'm
being a better person.
yeah.
Because
I'll
what
be the
is
first
quote
to
unquote
admit.
good? Yeah.
Right. I'll be the first to admit, there was a lot of stuff I subscribed to as a child and as an adolescent that I look back on and I'm like, God damn, like I was
Yeah.
stupid. But it
Yeah.
took somebody coming to me, and it also took me putting in the work to be something better than what I was. If you're showing no type of evolution,
Right.
that's the issue. It's like you can say you're a good person until the cows come home. It doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
If every time somebody comes to you with something, you are then taking it to heart and taking it
Right.
personally.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's frustrating because it's just like it doesn't have anything to do with you as a person. It just has to do with the facts of how you see the world and how other people's realities actually are. Um,
Right. Exactly.
it,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. But, in a perfect world, which is not going to exist, but on this globe. So much that we got into and so many conversations that obviously we need to continue. But Hermana, it was good to be back on the mic with you.
Absolutely, girl. I'm very,
Yes.
very happy we got to say this. I'm sorry it's not under better circumstances.
I mean,
Because it's always, but that's what I enjoy about this, this little space that we've created. And, I think that it's important for us to continue having these conversations. Obviously,
indeed.
there's a lot more that we can't get into right now, but, I'm hoping that down the line we can have more of these because
Indeed.
it's incredibly important, especially now more than ever.
Yep.
With expansion coming for the PWHL, I'm sure it's going to affect women's hockey a lot more.
Ugh.
With presumably more of these type of tournaments coming up, with presumably the Olympics on the with the Olympics on the
Yeah.
horizon,
Gosh.
and with
Going to
World
Italy.
Championships as well. World Championships are right around the corner
That's
too.
it. I'm excited.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, there's going to be more of these conversations. This conversation is constantly going to be revolving and hopefully evolving, but
Yes.
we'll see.
We shall see. Well, thank you all for joining us. This was just kind of like, hey, we want to chop it up, have a vent session. But now we got some technology things figured out. So we're gonna figure out a way to get back to a schedule because again, we're really fostering a community at Black Rosie Media, and the intersection between sports and politics is huge, is always been a huge part of that. That's actually how Black Rosie Media, the early evolution started during COVID. And it seems like now it's time to get back to our roots. So I'm so
Absolutely.
grateful for you, Hermana, for,
Okay.
always being someone who we can just have these raw conversations with a little bit of fun. Cause, I mean, listen, we got to laugh a little bit,
Not
not
keep them
not a whole lot,
crying,
but
dude. Like,
listen, or raging, right?
or
Um,
raging, yeah. Keep the
but
blood pressure down.
right. Daryl, thank you for joining in. Always
Thanks,
in the super
Daryl.
chats. I don't always know what you're talking about, but that's okay too. We appreciate you stopping through. And we had Ghost earlier, but we will be back. We have an upcoming Tempestagi talk with our other Rodriguez, the Portuguese Rodriguez, Roberta. We're going to
The
be
Brazilian
talking
cousin.
about some moves from the Seattle Storm, things of that nature. And then Brian Florentin and I will continue to curate your women's basketball roundup newsletter. If y'all are not subscribed, go ahead and do that. But for Angelica Rodriguez, Erica L. Ayala, we're going to send you off for the rest of your day. Be well. And remember, stay feisty out here because we got some things we got to combat, but we're always going to lean into truth, justice, and love. On that note, peace out, everybody. Let's hit it.